Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our next MicroStrat chat, Leadership During COVID-19, the CEO Perspective. This is a continuation from our first session. So thank you for joining us again. Just so everyone's aware, we do have a half-day virtual conference coming up next Friday, May 8th. It is going to have 20 different speakers from all over the world. So make sure you check out our website, look at the agenda. It really is going to be full of great conversation with 4 different panels. We also have a guest speaker coming on midday, Michelle Wooker, the author of The Gray Rhino. So that's going to be a special treat. Anyway, in the meantime, let me pass this back over to Lisa so we can kick off our webcast for today.
Thank you so much, Kelly, and good morning, everyone. And I'd like to welcome back Anthony Bongiovanni, the CEO of MicroStrategies, and Ralph DeVito, the CEO of Investment Center. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming back today. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you guys this morning. It's been a couple of weeks since we last spoke, and I think we're all continuing to adjust to the reality of life with COVID-19. Anything that you guys would like to share as far as what you've experienced over the last 2 weeks? Ralph, would you like to start us off today?
Yeah, sure. Outside of the business part of it, and what's going on, we had one of these with my staff yesterday. 100 or so advisors, and the executive team gave a synopsis of what's going on. I started, and we went through the whole, each department, myself, marketing, and so on. And my COO gave his presentation, and at the end he paused and he said, that was it. And then he stopped and said, I have one more thing. And he just got completely choked up and just started to talk about, if you can go out and someone in your neighborhood, or you're an elderly person in your neighborhood, or someone who needs some help, go out and reach. And I think he had the whole place in tears. And this is a big burly guy who doesn't take anything from anybody. And I think what we're finding here, I'm finding, is that these scenarios bring out the best and the worst in people, but I'm finding that bringing out really the best. You're going to find out exactly who people are during these times, but it's just really touching, and I'm finding a lot of that lately. So that's kind of the thing that hit me the most and hit me recently yesterday.
I agree with you 100% on that. I think people are being a lot more introspective, and it's funny coming out of stores, if you will. It's normally you'll speak to people and you'll talk to people, but today it makes it a little bit difficult with the masks and everything else, and it's a little bit awkward. But I think everybody in their own way is really trying to go out of their way to be kind and to be courteous and to be helpful, right? So to people that you don't know, strangers. I know we're working on a community outreach program so we can help utilize some of our free cycles with some of our teams to do things that would be helpful to seniors, and I think that those things are important. And when you take a look at the difference from a couple of weeks ago, I think one of the keys is that we have the ability to kind of reflect on a number of things, not just personal and human in nature, but as far as business too. And what do we do moving forward? This particular crisis is kind of unique in itself, if you will. A natural disaster oftentimes is a very quick downturn and a very quick recovery. And an economic crisis oftentimes, even though if you take a look at like 2008, that the banking system failed pretty quickly, but it didn't impact business real quickly. So it's kind of a slower downturn and then a slower recovery. And this is kind of the worst of both, because it's a very quick economic downturn. Businesses just come to a complete stop. And now it's going to be a very slow recovery, if you will. And we're in this period. I think 2 weeks ago we were very focused on the things that needed to get done immediately. How do we transform to work from home? How do we make sure our customers are getting the tools and the process and the help that they need in order to be able to work from home and continue their businesses going? And now today we're kind of we don't necessarily know exactly where it's going to go. We have a plan. We think we know where it's going to go, but we're really waiting to see what happens. And I think it gives people a lot more time for thought and introspection. So hopefully it'll be a lot of positives that come out of this, just not negatives.
Absolutely. So I mean, we say that life has all different stressors in life, and I think events such as pandemics or disasters, as you've said, really put a stressor on us that's it's out of the usual. You know, people say it's either a black swan or a gray rhino as things we might have been able to see, but not necessarily predict how much of a stressor it would have on us. When you have stress that applies to things, it also then shows, has people either rise to the occasion, as you guys have said, or you also see where there could be some gaps with things. I think, Ralph, that was a great story you had mentioned about your COO. Have there been experiences as you've seen this stress applied where you've seen either people in your organization or teams in your organization that have truly risen to the occasion and thrived in this stressful time?
Yeah, you know, over the years, you always try to hire, you know, the best people to do the job. You know, you hire average people, you can get average results, and we try to hire exceptional people to get exceptional results. And the stress of this, you know, you just don't expect or consider on an interview process how someone would react to this. But what I'm finding is certainly my executive team has risen to the occasion, and so seamlessly. And it makes it really, it makes you proud of all the employees that we have. And even the whole staff in itself has just pitched in, done whatever it took to get it done. You know, it was just, hey, we need to do this, 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 and this. This is our plan. And you're going to be working from home. You're going to be coming to the office. And honestly, everybody has just stepped up. So it's been really enlightening to see how well people really and how much they care about their jobs and doing their jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, one thing about a crisis is it tends to amplify strengths and weaknesses of organizations, individuals, processes, tools, and you get to shake it all out there. And I think, you know, as your experience is very similar, Ralph, I think we have very similar experience here too. We get to deal with crises, but on a much more local or smaller nature on a regular basis, especially being in the technology business, right? So, you know, oftentimes hardware fails, things happen, right? People's production environments are you know, affected. And those things in an organization are critically important, right? So our ability to be able to support that and be able to manage that well is of fundamental importance in terms of what we do. And I have to say that that's always been one of the areas that we've always shined in, the ability to be able to respond to those things. And regardless of what happens to be going on during the day, during normal periods, when a customer has a crisis, if you will, right, there are technical teams and their ability to be able to get focused, to get in, get what needs to be done, and then get the customers operational again has always been incredible. And the same thing, we've seen that today, right? They exhibit the same focus, right, and the same execution that they have. But then internally within the rest of the organization, there were lots of things that needed to change pretty quickly. And, you know, our administrative teams having to go work from home, you know, that's been incredible. And then marketing, right? Our marketing organization to be able to go out and message not only to the external customers of people outside MicroStrategies, but internally. And that had to change overnight in terms of how we're going at things. I mean, live events canceled immediately, right? Face-to-face is impossible. How do we get our messages out? How do we respond to people? How do we communicate? You know, the marketing team has been incredible. And then the leadership team too. It's, you know, we had to start evaluating how do we respond to this from day one? And, you know, everybody had to put their heads together and contribute, right? Because the business literally changed overnight. And I think, you know, in many of those cases, it showed the strength and brought out the strength in people and what we do. And of course, you know, along the way, there are weaknesses that come out. They get amplified too, right? So capturing those, identifying them, and prioritizing them is really important, because that's how you make your organization better and stronger coming out of something like this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So obviously, as leaders of organizations for as many years as you guys have led your organizations, there's always going to be things that are unknown and uncertain that keep you up at night. I'm curious to see what were things that kept you up at night before the crisis, and what are the things that may keep you up at night as we're going through the crisis?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, I think one of the things that we may have talked about this a little bit on the prior segment, but you know, in this business, in the technology business, it's constantly changing, right? So, you know, the things that kept me up at night was how do you continuously adapt to that, right? How do you continue to move your business model to stay relevant to your customers and move forward? Today, you know, one big thing that keeps me up is the people, right? How do we do the best job to helping our staff get through this? Because it's difficult on a lot of people. And one of the things too that concerns me greatly that we're working on is the work-life balance. You know, we've got a large team of individuals that work very, very hard. And I think today when you have people working from home, that the whole work-life balance now has been completely obliterated because they're not leaving the office and ending their day, right? And you have a lot of people working. So how do you fix that? How do you make it so that they know it's all right? Listen, you're going to work your time, you're going to get your tasks done, you're going to close your laptop, and you're finished. Don't go looking at it. Go looking at it anymore. And I'm very concerned about that. And I think I actually read a good article about that the other day, and it's not happening just at MicroStrategies, it's happening everywhere, you know. So certainly that's my most immediate, you know, current worry. But then the other thing too is all of our, you know, technology changes, and we work with our customers to apply that technology to help drive their businesses. But today, the one thing that is happening that's different from any other times is that everybody's business, or an awful lot of people's businesses, have changed overnight. And how do we help that? How do we help them with technology to help them change their businesses overnight? And that's a big concern. And it's a big focus. It's what we're spending a lot of time on organizationally to help to identify how the customers' businesses are changing and how we can help them as well transform through that change. How do we transform our business, and how do we help them with their transformations that they have to do now today as their business models are changing?
Yeah, you're right, Anthony. I probably have 100 different things I could say that kept me up at night, you know, prior to this. You know, it's people, it's the economy, it's the technology, it's cybersecurity, regulations, dealing with new regs and stuff such as that. But right now, it's part of it's the economy, how people are being affected. I think, you know, the 3.5 million people applied last week, and I think we're at 35 million people unemployed. That's going to have a tremendous effect on all of us going forward. I also worry a little bit about how we're going to reopen. You know, as this reopens, how are we going to keep our employees safe? What are those procedures we're going to have to implement to keep everybody safe? The other thing, like you said, it's everything's a change now. It's constant communications, and the communication chain is varied. You know, we were probably the next week we were going to plan our big conference. We're not going to have it. So now we're doing things like this, these kind of webinars to keep everybody informed. We're doing new technologies to make it easier for them, the advisors, to do their business with, whether that's e-signature, or documents, you know, electronic documents and things of that nature. And it's all, you know, everything's changed. And when we're going to look at this, you have to evaluate where we're at, where we're going with it. But it's been a big, huge change, and the world's going to be a little bit different from a business point of view going forward.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So on that note, I mean, obviously the level of uncertainty and volatility that exists in the world we have right now today is very high. And I know that, Anthony, as you've said, there's always been change that has occurred in the world that we live in, especially as technology continues to disrupt what we do. But with respects to how, you know, you guys have mentioned that there's change, and as you mentioned that there's some gaps in things you may have identified or weaknesses as a result of the stressors. How are you going to, I guess, navigate some of the ambiguity that exists today and learn from that and apply, actually even in the current state of impacting how you're operating and you're navigating? I mean, what types of things do you feel as though are really critical to be focusing on right at this stage of the crisis from within the organizations with respects to how you're operating and navigating the business?
Well, like I was saying before, it's a continuous evaluation, right? Identifying those things that are working well, identify those things that are not working so well. you know, today we really need to, we as an organization continue to look at our priorities, right, and make sure that A, we're executing on those priorities, and B, on a day-to-day basis, are they still the priority, right? Things are shifting moment by moment, and then refining, you know, the goals, where we're trying to go, right? We're all trying to figure out where's the puck going to end up and trying to get ahead of it, and you know, that's important. So being able to refine your strategy is critical. Being agile enough to be able to change and move very quickly is ultimately important. There is a ton of ambiguity and uncertainty, and I think that there are, you know, you've got to pick a few potential paths, right, or where you ending points, if you will, where you think things might go, and take the most logical steps towards getting there. I think the key is to be able to move quick, right? If you think it's going to, you know, you think the government's going to start opening things quickly, or you think it's going to start opening things slowly, right? You got to plan for those things, but the most important part is be agile enough to move quickly as that changes. And that, I think, fundamentally is the key, because we're not quite sure where everything goes. We just need to be able to move in that direction when we see it go in that direction.
Yeah, I think that we're, you know, we pivoted really quickly this year when this all happened, from either declaring on a normal disaster recovery as to going to remote access. And we're going to, you know, obviously continue to look at all of those factors and what we've done correct and what we've done wrong, and what else we might possibly need in the future. Like Anthony said, if they open up now and it does, you know, create a different scenario, we're going to have to try to think about what that could possibly look like in the future. You know, and you know, but we could try all we want, but we just don't know. No one would have expected this. But we've been lucky that, you know, it's worked out very well for us. We're kind of running seamlessly at this point, but I think we can add to it. You know, we're gonna, you know, you have three things. You have people, you have processes, and you have the technology. So what we're looking at now is, you know, obviously the people we have, I know that are good, doing a great job. Executive team is spectacular, as is everybody in the whole organization. The process to do all this and deal with this type of thing, we had one, we pivoted, and now we're going to think about another one. And then we're going to look at that process, see what we possibly can improve on, whether the technology is different and so on. And then we're going to, just for argument's sake, we used to do disaster recovery. I think, Anthony, you make us do it twice a year, where we go to DR, we shut down the building like it was blown up, and we bring everything up. So now going forward, we're going to probably have people working from home periodically to test all the systems going forward. Make sure that all the software in the computers is working. And if we send, you know, 10% of our staff home or 20% periodically, we're going to learn how to deal with this in a better way. And then we're going to find out, hey, maybe they need this piece of technology, which will make Anthony very happy because I'm going to get it from him.
We appreciate that.
So, you know, it's a complicated situation. We just don't know where we're going, but we're going to keep planning and, you know, doing, you know, my disaster recovery book's this thick, and it's probably going to be twice as big after this.
Right.
So, I mean, obviously, yeah, you guys are very much highlighting the ambiguity and things that we're learning as we're going through this. Do you feel as though, and you're doing that to say, how do I make my organizations more resilient so that I can respond better if something else happens, because we don't know what that next thing will be? Do you feel as though the decision making and the action taking approaches that you've taken, that you guys have normally done in your organizations, do you think that that is evolving as well as to how your organizations and your leadership teams are making those decisions? I know Anthony mentioned agility. How does that factor into decision making and putting things into action? Yeah,
decision making has changed quite a bit today. You know, at the normal course and speed of business, typically you got a fair amount of time to evaluate, right, and then decide, and then execute, and then analyze, right, to make sure that you know, the what you were expecting was what you got. And today, you know, it's a little bit different because the decisiveness is key. We don't have have the ability to have as much time and thoughtfulness, right? We have to decide, and then we have to action it very quickly. But what's even more important is that we have to measure it really fast, because we don't have the time to be able to make a decision and not evaluate quickly whether that actually is moving in the right direction or not. So the whole process is kind of turned on its ear a little bit. You talk about being able to fail fast. Well, it's really quick here, and you really have to notice that, notice that failure in case you're not moving in the direction that you need for it to go. But this has put a lot of stress in the, if you will, the whole time frame that we have to be able to do things. We don't have the luxury of being I don't want to use the word thoughtful, because we're thoughtful in everything that we're doing, even when we're making decisions very quickly, but you don't have the luxury of taking a lot of time and doing a lot of analysis beforehand. So that decisiveness and actioning very quick, and the most important part, being able to measure that or evaluate that really quick, is critically important in a time like right now.
Yeah, I agree, Anthony. Like I said in the last call, I went away the first or second week of March, and not too much was going on, and kind of blew up as I was away. And we were on the phone with the executive team and discussed what we were going to do. And normally, in a normal course of business, someone gives a plan, and we get another one. Different routes we could take. We investigated. We do compliance. We do all our research. But on that day, it was just, hey, what do you need? And Rob said, we need a lot of laptops. So, okay, get it done. Go, and we couldn't get them. They were all delayed too. But we had to order everything, and the decision had to be made in 5 seconds. And you hope that you have the team that in place that's going to give you the best guidance to go in that direction. It's worked out for us really well. But yeah, we just don't have that time. I'm the person that, give me a presentation, let me digest it, and I'll get back to you in 3 days. That's the kind of the normal thing for me, because I can evaluate it all. But in this one, we didn't have that luxury.
Yeah. Do you feel as though the attributes that you looked for in either your own leadership or the leadership around you are different as a result of the crisis? What you might have considered strengths of a leader, maybe now, given what you've learned, maybe a little different?
I think the attributes actually are the same. I think they're, in business and in crisis, right? You're looking for a lot of the same things: the ability to be able to communicate, confidence, calmness is another adjunct to confidence, right? You want to be able to show people that you've got things under control, at least, as best that you possibly can. I think decisiveness is critical, and execution, of course, there's lots of sub-attributes too that are very, very important as well. Like compassion for the team, and I think, knowing Ralph for as many years as I've known him, and of course myself, I think we're very alike in that regard. The compassion for a team and concern, right? And as well, it extends out to our customers and extends out to his advisors. But it's the ability to apply those attributes very quickly that really is important today. And that part, I think, moving forward, as I'm looking at potential leaders for the organization too, I think the attributes are going to be the same, but the ability to be able to execute very high stress, fast moving environments is really going to be important. Some people do very well in that environment, and some people don't. And fortunately for me here with our leadership team, they all seem to be pretty darn good at it. But that's not always the case. I've had people in the past where, you put them in those high stress situations. They're very good at what they do on a normal day-to-day basis, but it doesn't work quite as well. So I think that's a critical additional attribute, if you will.
Got it. Ralph, how about yourself?
I completely agree with Anthony. I don't know how much more I can add to that. Other than that, yeah, I'm actually proud of all the people and how they've reacted. And I don't see how you could judge that in an interview. It's over time. But I'm real proud of everybody throughout the whole organization of how they stepped up and dealt with this whole situation.
Right.
Good. Kelly, I'm sorry, you said there were some questions that were coming in. Did you want to?
Yeah, we have 3 questions that have come in. The first one, sorry, I'm just scrolling back up. We've had quite a few come in. How are you and your companies becoming more proactive rather than reactive in today's world and crisis?
We are really focused. I've mentioned this before. We're very focused in taking it one step further and trying to understand what our customers are doing, right? How their businesses are going to be changing, and that's really kind of new to us because, as I had mentioned, everybody's business model is turning on its ear. Most organizations, if you will, right? Not just a handful. So we've got to take a much different look, at how we approach our business, and we need to be a lot more proactive because I think in a lot of cases too, our customers need help from a number of different people, not just technology people, in terms of how do they move from point A to point B. So being proactive and identifying how we can help them, I think is important. I think that's critically important. Internally, identifying some of the areas where we've had some struggles, right? In this environment, in this particular pandemic, and making sure that we focus on dealing with that. And fortunately for us, none of them have been really significant or material to the overall business, but they still are important, right? The inefficiencies start to pop up within the organization, and I think that's one of the things that we really want to focus on and be proactive in terms of doing that. We don't want to waste. And I hate to use that word, but we don't want to waste this situation that we're in and not learn from it. So it's critical to capture those learnings and then act upon them. And I do think that this is, we'll see more of this. It's going to take a while for this to go away. And I think that, we'll see other things in our future, hopefully not to this degree, but I think organizations will be much well prepared to go deal with it.
Yeah, that's great, Anthony. I think for the most part, our firm is fairly proactive on a lot of different levels. I think we have to become a little bit more proactive on crisis situations with the reps and the advisors, and making sure that we have the tools and the technology to get through this. We're going to be changing a lot of the different ways that we're communicating. I think it's about communication is the big problem here, and we're going to take more steps to do things like this, meetings and such, keep them more informed, and very importantly, get a lot of the technology out there that's going to make them be able to deal with these kind of crises.
Okay. Kelly, what other questions you wanted to ask?
Why don't I go ahead and just pass it back to you? I know it's almost 10:45 and we don't have much time left, so I don't want to disrupt the conversation if you had a few other questions prompted for the speakers.
Sure. I mean, I guess it's absolutely. So with respects to the different areas that you guys are identifying as far as where you feel as though the organization does need to improve, what is the approach you are taking to, are you enacting some of those changes now during the crisis, or are you kind of looking at those as more longer term things you would apply, or is it a combination of both? How are you kind of approaching that?
For me, it's a combination of both. Certainly for those things that are affecting our ability to be able to perform, or we're working on them right now. That part's critical. Again, it comes down to the priorities, and for those things that aren't quite as high in priority or not affecting our immediate performance today as we're supporting our customers, those we're putting off until the future. I think the key is making sure we don't lose them in the mix, right? Hanging on to that and executing on correcting some of those things that need to be done is critically important.
Yeah, we've started to analyze and we can see right now what the differences are and what the shortcomings are, and we're instantly trying to implement new and better, whether it's technology, communication systems, just any way of doing business that's a little bit better. But we're looking at the really mission critical type stuff too, and we're also concerned that we keep what we're doing during this crisis running smoothly. But yeah, we're going to have some of them that are going to start right away, and some of them will be in the future.
Great. And you're just basically leveraging what you're using the prioritization or what the impact is to the businesses in order to determine which ones you choose over the others.
Yeah, absolutely.
Impact to the business. I'm sorry, Ralph. The impact to the business, or the impact to, you know, our employees, and the impact to our customers, right? We're looking at all those things.
Right. You guys both talked about kind of, we talked about the leadership, and you talked about the decision making and the data. Much of the data that we may have made decisions on in the past may not necessarily, it doesn't really indicate how things are operating today, you know, meaning that it was based upon how we operated before. How will you guys, in addition to the fact that you have to make decisions more quickly, how will you guys look at decisions, given the fact that you know that things moving forward may be very different than what we experienced in the past? So that data that informed, the data from the past that may have informed the future may not be as informative as it may have been, you know, prior to the crisis. Have you guys thought about how you would leverage, you know, the historical data and apply it to things going forward?
Well, I think that this crisis has shown that you can't. You almost can't do that. You just have to do the best you can. You write up your plans. You run your, and that goes to every part of business. You know, I from day to day, I run into a situation that every day that just turns me on the dime that I wasn't expecting. You know, you would think after 35 years of being in my business, I would know everything about it, but I don't. It just it's constant change. So, yes, and then you're looking at this massive change of technology and demographics and things of that nature. You just, it's difficult, but you have to analyze. I think you have to look forward more than backwards at this point. What we did 20 years ago doesn't even exist anymore. I mean, when I started this, I didn't have a cell phone.
Yeah, right. Me,
I go in my office. I used to joke. I remember walking around. I go, "Hey, where's that microfiche thing?" And they all look at me like, "What's microfiche?" You know. So you can't look backwards. It's constantly looking forwards to find out what's out there. Analyze it. Look at it all. Evaluate it all, and you have to pick a direction. And the problem here is it just moves so fast now. It just changes every single day.
Yeah.
It's more and more difficult every year. It seemingly was much more simple a long time ago.
That's for sure. Yeah, I agree with that. All bets are off. I mean, the data, the old data that we had, which may have been yesterday, right? It isn't quite relevant right now. And hopefully in time it will, I'm sure it will be relevant again, if you will. But you know, what we're dealing with today, and I was talking about it before, right? Just the nature of this particular situation being very different from everything else that we've been through in our lifetimes, right? That very quick decline, and what looks like it's going to be a slow recovery. You know, when it's a quick decline and a fast recovery, you know exactly what you have to do. It's very obvious. When you go through a disaster like a hurricane, right, where it knocks out your facilities or what have you, but you know, all right, I got to go rebuild, right? You deal with the situation, and then you put the plans together to go rebuild whatever it is that you have to rebuild. In an economic crisis like 2008, you had time to kind of figure it all out. You did have lots of data from prior economic situations was very pertinent to that and how you executed on that. Here, it's a very different story. So what we've really tried to do is to take a conservative approach to it. You know, in terms of how long is it going to be around, when will we start going back, and then improve our outlook and adjust our execution accordingly, right? Because the one thing that we don't want to do is not take a conservative view and not take the appropriate actions and then have to continue to I'd rather take actions that are more positive in nature than continuously taking actions that are declining. I don't think that breeds confidence in or hope really in anybody. So I will say that I do think that things are a bit better than we were forecasting, which is positive, and that's exactly what I was hoping for. But yeah, it's a brave new world right now. We'll get back to a little bit of the old world where the data points and the information that we had before will be relevant again to some degree, but at the moment it does not have the same level of relevancy that it had yesterday.
So would you agree that maybe in addition to, the decisiveness of actions that leaders need to take today, also their ability to navigate that ambiguity more so today than they may have in the past, because they don't have that historical data that they may have had a comfort level with in the past, and now they have to just really make those decisions in this level of ambiguity and move forward?
It's important, right? You have to pick a path. So you're going, you're using your entire database of information and experiences, and then as well your gut, right, where you think it's going to go. And we're all becoming experts in different areas. We're all kind of pseudo medical professionals now at this point, because we voraciously read everything we can find to figure out what do we do if we get sick or a family member gets sick, or what have you. We're focused on a lot of other things today than we were yesterday. So it's interesting,
Right.
to say the least.
You just can't do nothing. You have to do something.
Right.
Sitting still is not going to work.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
We had one more question come in. Is it okay if I ask it?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Lisa, it actually was pointed at you.
Here we go.
I want to know what has caught your attention most through this conversation today?
I think really for me, always listening to leaders such as Anthony and Ralph identify what it is that they have to do on a day in and day out basis to navigate. I think that many times people don't necessarily understand what it takes for leaders to make the decisions that guide people forward. And I think the things that they're emphasizing with respects to having a human side of what we do and having that compassion, but also exactly what Ralph just said, you can't do nothing, because nothing just, it's just not an option. So you have to follow your gut, as Anthony said, and you have to make that decision. You have to lead forward. And I think that for the people that are joined today, I think that those are really important things to take away. There is no crystal ball that leaders have. They have to really, they have to leverage what information they have at the time, and they have to decide, and they have to move forward. So I think it's great to hear both Ralph and Anthony speak to that.
Awesome. And it looks like one more has just come in. It is, what is the #1 challenge you are addressing for your customers?
Right now, for us specifically, immediately after the onset of this, the #1 challenge was being able to help them work remotely. That was critical, right? Giving everybody the tools that they needed to be able to work remotely and be effective within their organizations. Now that challenge is changing a bit, because I think we've, for most organizations, and certainly our customers, we've gotten to them to that point. Now the biggest challenge is, how do we go back? How do we go back to a more normal environment when they start opening up, the country then? How do we move people, back into environments? And that on top of what does their environment look like? There's a lot of things that kind of stop. People's priorities changed very, very quickly. So, the challenge for us is to work with those customers and help them prioritize those technology things that they need to do, whether it's specifically responding to this pandemic, or how do you prioritize the things that were on your plate before? Are they still important today, right? And are they important tomorrow? One of the things that I think is very important with our customers moving forward is the portability of their operations. And I think a lot of people are going to be looking at that. Well, does that mean now that what they were planning on doing prior is no longer relevant? How does that need to change? So, helping our customers through that thought process is one of the biggest challenges we have today.
Yeah, for us, just by the nature of our business, having all these 300 independent advisors out there that are already, for the most part, working theoretically from home or remotely or in small offices, it's not about that. And for us, it's really about the communications, one, communicating with them about what we're doing and how we're running, giving them the ability and the tools to communicate with their clients that they can't sit down with face to face, giving them more technology to give them the ability to have documents out to them for e-signature, because you just can't do it the other way. I guess you could FedEx it back and forth, but that's kind of cumbersome. And really just, calming them too is another issue, and giving them communications that they can give out to the clients and from that nature. But our bottlenecks are a little bit different than other companies.
What would be on that, just to expand that question a little bit more, what would be one area of focus that you would have with your customers to help them learn from this and be more resilient in the future? And I know, obviously being in two different spaces between technology and the financial side, what would that be? Like just one thing that you would do with them differently? And from a technology side, Anthony, what do you think what will be the one focus area that you think that organizations should be focusing on to be more resilient in the event of something like this going forward?
Well, the most obvious one is the ability to be able to move their workforce at any time.
Yeah.
But I think it's different by organization. I don't know that there's one particular thing.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what I would pick as the one item that would help them.
Okay.
But of course, I think the one thing that everybody, sometimes I approach questions from a technology perspective, but I think one of the things that every organization needs to think about is, did they execute well in this situation?
Mm-hmm.
As a company, did they execute well? And I think that that's something that every organization should be evaluating today, right? And identify that, because if you don't do that, then should this situation happen again, right? You haven't necessarily fixed operationally your ability to be able to be agile and to change with the times. So I certainly would expect everybody to be very introspective with their businesses, and after this is over, really identify, how did we do, and what is it that we need to do in the future to better adapt to situations like this.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to, for instance, for our company, we're going to survey the 300 people and find out what they felt were shortcomings, what we can do in the future to help them.
Mm-hmm. And
then if we come up with a plan that we think is correct, and get them prepared for, God forbid, something like this again.
I'm going to ask one final question. Do you think that, given the fact that this was such a significant stressor to organizations and people have learned a lot, do you feel as though there's ways you can apply different stressors in your organization going forward to kind of help you maintain that resiliency? Are there ways that you might do that to be able to see where those gaps may be prior to having an event like this?
I think I talked about it before. I think what we're going to do is we're going to offload people over and over and continue to test them, not test them, but like I said, put 10 or 20% of the workforce outside, so that we can make sure that the systems are working, and that as our technology changes, make sure that their technology and their ability to work from home is still there all the time, and get their feedback on what they need. Do they need, I don't even know what it would be that they would need at this point, but get that feedback, and just that's how you have to build. You have to practice this.
Right.
Yeah. Nobody really likes to provide stressors when they're truly stressors. But I think, and certainly we are all getting stressed with what we're doing today. But I think giving people, let's call it the responsibility, a very focused responsibility to accomplish things, in a time frame, so they understand their true ability to be able to lead in very stressful situations. I think that becomes very important. So we are going to look at that a little bit differently, as we move forward, because we have to make sure that in all situations, right, that we can perform as an organization. And I think that one of the things that will help us, as we do that, is to make sure that we are providing the level of responsibility to individuals, and making and allowing them the kind of the latitude to be able to do what they think is best, so they can really show their ability to be able to perform and get used to performing, right? Outside of it, I think key in a crisis is that everybody needs to be focused on certain things, and you have to delegate, and you have to give people the responsibility to get things accomplished. Work together as a team, but they need to own whatever particular responsibilities you have, so you can make progress moving forward. I think that we need to do that more coming out of this. We need to make sure that we're giving people the latitude on those responsibilities and giving them the focus and the ability to win, or maybe not win as well as they would like in doing that, so they can kind of get used to that whole process, so that it becomes a normal part of a normal course of speed of business, just not actions that happen during a crisis.
Right.
Yeah, I'm finding that, like, we've always given out the ability for the people to have the latitude to do what they think is correct and get it done. What I'm finding now, which is very interesting, is that everybody is obviously doing their job that they needed to do. They're dealing with the additional stress of the crisis and all the things that go along with that. And I'm finding actually that we're actually working better. We're actually integrating more. We're communicating almost a little better than we were when everybody was in the office. I think when you get in the office, you get a little, complacent sometimes. And but now I think there's a camaraderie that's out there right now that's incredible in our firm, and just really proud of everybody. And it's just amazing to watch.
That's fantastic. So we are at the top of the hour, and I just wanted to say thank you again for your time. And I think the message really I'm hearing from both of you is that how do we basically learn from this extreme crisis and ensure that going forward we're constantly integrating different ways of working into what we're doing, so that we can ensure that we see the gaps a little bit more visibly as we're moving, and not waiting for something of this magnitude to expose it. But that being said, just things that you guys have done and how it's prepared you and how it's pulled the teams together, and having strong leaders to be able to take you through that, I think continues to be valuable lessons that we're learning from both of you. So I don't know if you guys each have any other final things that you want to say to everyone that's joined us today.
I just want to say thank you for joining us, and please stay safe and healthy.
Absolutely. Stay hopeful every day, make progress every day, and we'll all get out of this having learned a number of lessons, but being stronger for it. So thank you again.
So Kelly, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yes, thank you to all of you for joining us. I echo everything they just said. Stay safe, stay healthy. Again, we do invite you to join us on May 8th, where we're going to have an international panel to explore today, tomorrow, through and beyond. Again, we are going to have Michelle Wooker joining us midday as a guest speaker. She is the author of The Gray Rhino. If you haven't read her book, you should go ahead and check it out. We're very excited about this conference. So make sure you head over to our website and give it a check out and register. Have a good day, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.